Hi everyone, I'm Steve and this is the College Support Network. In the past, I've worked in high schools as a college advisor, and I also have experiences working in college financial aid, academic advising, as well as admissions. I'm really passionate about college access, and I know applying to college can be really confusing as well as really frustrating. That's why I'm here to provide you all with the most accurate and quality information so you can reach your college goals. I know rising cost of tuition is something that a lot of students are facing right now, and that's why for today's video I want to give you all a brief general overview of the different sources of financial aid as well as the different types of financial aid that may be available for you as a college student. I really think it's important for you all to understand where your financial aid is coming from, who's providing it, and how you can actually start getting your hands on some of that money in the future. Before we get started though, I do have two important things that I want to note. The very first is I am not a financial aid advisor, nor do I claim to be one. The purpose of this video is just to provide you all with general information about financial aid. I'm not telling you what you should apply for, what's the best for you, and things like that. This is just for general information so you can make informed decisions about your college degree. And the second important note is something I've already mentioned already, but this video is just a brief overview of the different types and sources of financial aid that may be available to you. I'm not going to go into specific details about specific financial aid programs like Cal Grant, Pell Grant, scholarships, work study, and things like that. The great thing is I'm actually going to make dedicated videos for each of the things I just mentioned over the next couple of weeks. So if that's something that you're interested in, I really recommend subscribing. And with all that being said, let's get started. Alright y'all, so before we get started on the different types of financial aid such as grants, loans, scholarships, and work study, I think it's really important for you all to understand where your financial aid is coming from. Basically, who's providing it and who's offering it to you. In general, there are 4 different sources that provide you all with financial aid. The first is the federal government, the second is the state government, the third is the college or institution that you're going to, and then the fourth is just private or outside organizations or companies. When we're talking about the federal government in terms of financial aid, we're usually referring to the US Department of Education. However, there are other federal agencies that do provide you with financial aid. The federal government probably provides you all with the most robust types of financial aid just because they offer all 4 of them. They provide you with grants, scholarships, work study, and loans. And for the most part, federal financial aid must be used for things such as college tuition, college fees and costs, room and board, transportation, and other school supplies. Now let's talk about state financial aid. When students think about state financial aid, the majority of the times they think it's just money from the state that they're from. However, this isn't always the case. A lot of the times it's actually the state that you plan on going to school. Please remember that every single state is going to do financial aid a little bit differently. A lot of them have different eligibility requirements, and then some have really robust and established financial aid programs, and some really don't have it at all. So the important thing to remember is just to do your own research. If you want to go to school in California or New York or Florida, make sure to do your research and figure out what the state financial aid is going to look like if you go to school there. In general though, the majority of states will offer you things such as grants, scholarships, and loans. It's pretty rare for schools to do things such as work study because work study is a federal program which you'll learn about in this video as well as another video, but most states don't do it, at least to my own knowledge. The next source of financial aid is from colleges and institutions, and as the name suggests, this is just money from the colleges and universities that you enroll in or plan to enroll in. I'm not going to go into too much detail here just because every single college and university does financial aid a little bit differently. A lot of them will provide you with things such as grants, loans, and scholarships, but then a lot won't as well. So it's really dependent on where you go to school and then your own financial background. If money for college is going to be an issue for you, or maybe you just want more money to go to school and you're curious about what types of financial aid the colleges that you're applying to have, I really recommend just contacting every single one of the financial aid offices and letting them know, hey, I'm interested in coming here. What types of financial aid can you offer me? What types of financial aid do you actually even offer in general? And lastly, the final source of financial aid comes from outside or private organizations. The source of financial aid really is a wild card just because it depends on a lot of different things such as where you're from, where you live, who you are, and a lot of other questions like that. In general though, the source of financial aid is offered by private organizations, companies, and programs. The most simple way to think about this is that it's just anything that isn't offered by the federal or state governments as well as the college that you're attending. For example, the Live Más Scholarship from Taco Bell, the Gates Millennium Scholarship, or Foot Locker Scholar Athletes are all different types of financial aid that's available from private or outside organizations. I know these all sound like really big companies, but private and outside organizations also include things in your own community. So if there's a local boys and girls club that offers a scholarship, or there's a local business or company that offers a grant for students that live in that city, that's also considered an outside source of financial aid. For the most part, most private and outside organizations will provide you with things such as scholarships and sometimes grants. Some of them will also offer you loans, but I really advise not to take out private loans just because you usually can get a better deal from the federal or state governments. However, I'll go more into detail about this in a future video when I talk specifically about loans. Alright y'all, so now that we talked about the different sources of financial aid, let's go into a little bit more detail and talk about some of the different types of financial aid that may be available for you, such as grants, scholarships, loans, as well as work study. I'll be listing them in order of best to worst, and please remember that this is just my opinion. If you disagree or you feel otherwise, feel free to comment down below and let me know what your thoughts are. The very first type of financial aid is grants, and grants is just a type of financial aid that you do not have to pay back and is considered basically free money. With that being said though, there are some really rare circumstances where you may have to pay back a grant. For the most part, it's usually if you leave school early or you withdraw from your program but you took out grant money. I'll leave a link below in the description for students that want to read a little bit more about this, but then I'll also leave links to different articles and resources that I use for this video as well. So definitely take a look if you want to learn more about anything else I mentioned in this video. When we talk about grants, there's honestly so many different types that we could talk about. There are some from the federal government, some from the state government, and some from the colleges or the institutions that you're going to. But then there are also different types of grants, such as need-based grants and merit-based grants. In short, need-based grants are just grants that are offered to students who show or demonstrate financial need. Basically, this just means that you are from a low-income family and you need extra support to help pay for college. Conversely, there are merit-based grants, which are basically the exact opposite of merit-based grants. You don't get it for financial need, you actually get it for excelling in things such as academics, sports, arts, and a handful of other things. One thing to know is that you can actually be eligible for both merit-based grants and need-based grants. So let's say if you show financial need but you also excel in science or something like that, you can actually still get both. I consider grants the best type of financial aid just because it's basically free money that you don't ever have to pay back unless you meet some of the circumstances I mentioned before. And on top of this, the application for most grants is pretty simple as well. All you really need to do is apply for the free application for Federal Student Aid, also known as the FAFSA, or you can fill out the California Dream Act, which is another application which I'll go into more detail in another video. But to get back to the point, all you really need to do is submit one of these applications and now you're eligible for federal grants, state grants, or even college grants as well. Alright y'all, let's talk scholarships. Scholarships are another form of financial aid that I consider free money that you don't have to pay back. Just like grants though, there are some very specific situations when you may have to pay back the scholarship, but it really depends on the scholarship issuer or the organization that you're working with. And just like grants again, there are a lot of different types of scholarships that may be available for you. Scholarships can be offered by the federal and state governments. However, I do think they're a little bit more commonly associated with different schools or colleges that you plan on enrolling to, as well as different private or outside organizations. And just like grants again, scholarships can come in the form of need-based or merit-based. And just to summarize again, need-based just means that you demonstrate financial need, while merit-based means that you're usually excelling in things such as sports, academics, music, or something else. One of the important things to know about scholarships is that there's really hundreds and thousands of scholarships out there, and they're also very unique and sometimes very specific. For example, there are scholarships out there for students that are tall. There are scholarships out there for students that are left-handed, scholarships for people that are vegetarian, scholarships for people that are Buddhist. Heck, I'm pretty sure there's a scholarship for someone that's tall, left-handed, vegetarian, and Buddhist. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of different scholarships out there, and there's always going to be multiple scholarships that are perfect for you to apply to. So it really is important for you all to do your research and figure out what scholarships may be available to you. I'll do a dedicated video in the future about how to go to school for free and how to get get scholarships to help pay for your college tuition and things like that. So if that's something that you're interested in, I really do recommend subscribing to this channel, just because I do think that's going to be a really important video, specifically for students that need the extra money to go to school. And lastly, I consider scholarships the second best type of financial aid, just because it's another type of financial aid that you really don't have to pay back, and it's considered free money. I would only put it under grants, just because for grants I do think the application process is a little bit easier. For most scholarships, you'll have to submit something or do a separate application besides the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act that I mentioned earlier. Alright y'all, what is work study? I get asked this pretty much every single year, and basically work study is a different type of financial aid that you do have to work for to get the actual money. In general, work study provides students with part-time work while they're still in school, so they can use some of that money to pay for college-related costs such as tuition, room and board, transportation, and things like that. Please remember though that work study is a federally funded program, and it's meant for students that demonstrate financial need. This means your household or family income does need to meet the eligibility requirements to be offered this program. Just like other things I mentioned in this video, I'll go into a little bit more detail about work study in its own dedicated video, but for the purpose of this video, here are some key things I want you all to be aware of. The first is you can get work study as a part-time or a full-time student. Next is not every college or university even participates in the work study program. So sometimes even if you meet the eligibility, but the school that you're going to doesn't actually participate in it, you won't be offered work study. Next, there's a maximum amount that you can earn as a work study student. However, this really depends on the school that you're going to as well as your household income. The next thing to remember is that work study really is just another job, right? The only difference here is that instead of getting paid by your employer or the place that you're working, you're actually getting paid by the federal government, which is pretty cool, I think. And the last important thing to remember about work study, and it's probably the most important thing that students get confused about, is that you're not actually always awarded the amount that you're given. For example, if you're awarded $1,000 for work study, you don't actually get that full $1,000 for not doing anything, right? Like I said, it's a part-time job, so you actually do have to apply for a position, interview, and then get it. Basically, you have to work and put in hours and get your paycheck every 2 weeks or month, and then work your way up to that $1,000. I consider work study the third best type of financial aid, just because once again, it's free money that you really don't have to pay back. The only reason it's under scholarships and grants is kind of obvious, but it's something that you actually have to apply for, and then actually get a job, and then actually do the work to get the money. I do think it's still great though, just because you get professional development, you actually get work experience, but like I said, there's a little bit more that you have to do to actually get the money. Alright y'all, now we've made it to the very last type of financial aid, and that's loans. And I know loans is something that a lot of students and parents hate to talk about, but I think it's important for us to discuss, just because a lot of students will end up having to take out 1 or 2 loans in their college career to pay for school costs. So loans are a type of financial aid that you do eventually have to pay back with interest on top. And as you can guess, this means that loans aren't a type of free money. Essentially, you're borrowing money from a lender or organization to help you pay for your college tuition, and then eventually you'll have to pay them back with some extra money on top, which is considered the interest. There are many
Stop it.
many types of loans out there, and a lot of different sources that you can use to get loans as well. There are loans offered by the federal government, state government, private or outside organizations, and even loans offered by the school or college that you're going to. And to make things even more confusing, all these different sources of loans that I just mentioned also have different types of loans as well. For example, the federal government by itself already offers subsidized loans, unsubsidized loans, plus loans, and even consolidation loans. And then each of these loans have different eligibility requirements that have varying interest rates, and then they even have different interest payments. I know this all sounds really confusing as well as overwhelming, and that's really because it is. I think loans are super confusing and there's a lot to talk about. So like I mentioned already, if you're interested in learning about eligibility, the different types of loans, and even if you should take out loans at all, make sure to stay tuned, because I will be doing a dedicated video about loans in the future. For now, just understand that at least for me, loans are probably the very last type of financial aid that you should look at when you're thinking about how to to finance your college degree. Like I mentioned already, grants, scholarships, and work study are all different types of financial aid that I consider free money, and I consider them to be better than loans just because you don't have to pay them back in the future. And with all that being said, that's all the content I have for today's video. I really hope it helped you learn a little bit more about the different sources of financial aid and the different types of financial aid that may be available for you in the future. Once again, make sure to subscribe if you're interested in learning more about specific types of financial aid like grants, work study, and different loans, or maybe if you want to learn about how to go to college for free by getting scholarships and things like that. I'll be doing a lot of videos in the future, so make sure to stay tuned. And before I let you go, I do have one question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not important and 10 being super important, how important is financial aid for you and your family as you decide what school to go to and why? Like I said, leave comments down below with any of your answers. Alright y'all, that's all I have for today. You could have been doing anything else, but you spent to hear me learning about college, and more specifically the different types and sources of financial aid. I think that's super awesome. As always, thumbs if you learned and subs if you loved. Take care y'all.